Well, I was actually I was raised in Westport, Connecticut, and I spent most of my growing up years there. Let me put it that way. And eventually, I was married, and we went to New York, and then we went to Colorado, where we wanted to take a fresh start, go west, young man, kind of thing, you know. And that's where my marriage dissolved, and I went to work for the Roosevelts.
And you were about how old?
I was 21.
21. Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was a lovely place to be, and I had Thomas with me, of course, and that's how we got to spend time with them. And I also was with John Robert Powers model agency there. And then went on to California, where I know you're from. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I was in Santa Monica.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And actually, I hate to tell you this, but I didn't really like California.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons not to.
Yeah, well,
certainly.
Well, I actually was homesick for the Four Seasons, and I did miss a lot of the New England things that I was so familiar with, so I wanted to come home. Of course, my mother joined me in Colorado, where she was the governess, by the way, for the Roosevelt family. And
so your mother was already in that line of work.
Yes, pretty much, yes.
And she hadn't worked for the Roosevelts for almost her whole life, or? No. She just, when she joined me in Colorado, and they were looking for a new governess. Actually, they were children. But anyway, we came back from California from Santa Monica. Then I bought the place on Boardman Street. I really wanted to provide the boys with a real wholesome atmosphere to grow up in, and with a little space. And this was by the way, the farm, the way it was designed, actually, there was a dirt road that ran between the two separate acreages, which were 80 altogether. It was 40 on one side and 40 on the other. And it was a dirt road, so it was wonderful for horseback riding and anything else that you'd want to do. Very little traffic. And there were a lot of people from New York that lived on Boardman Street. It was not a farm type of atmosphere, actually, though it looked like it. It overlooked Mount Everett, by the way, which is a gorgeous mountain view in Litchfield. And we were writers and artists, and all on the road. There was only one family, the Paul family, that was actually farmers on the entire road. And this road ran from Sheffield all the way into Great Barrington. You could ride the entire distance.
To the fairgrounds.
And right to the fairgrounds, actually. So that's how we got there. Also, I purchased the Village Green restaurant, which was for sale after being owned by a family by the name of Kirshner for many, many years. And I always wanted to have my own business, and I thought it would be a family business. It's a coffee shop. It was not a restaurant that sold any alcohol or anything like that. It was a real coffee shop. And in fact, one of the complaints when I opened up was that I had cleaned it up too much. Tablecloths, and I had little flowers on every table.
Yes,
and it was not appreciated by everyone. Some there were.
Too dainty.
But it was fun. Actually, it was a family business, and sometimes the children went there for breakfast before school. And I hired all local people. And I was kind of an outsider, however, from day one, because they could not quite figure out in the 60s, now we're talking about, how a single mom with two children could come from California and settle in Sheffield, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That boggled their mind. They thought something had to be really wrong. And I guess we didn't quite fit the mold, but it wasn't everybody. The people from New York and Connecticut, and actually Westport, to digress for a moment, the reason that town became so popular and famous was because it was commutable to Manhattan, and a lot of people could just hop the train, and in 35 minutes they were in Grand Central Station. And it started to happen also, just backed up a little bit to the Sheffield Great Barrington area, which finally became a very trendy place to be. They had the Tanglewood, and there was the playhouses and art galleries and that type of thing. So, in fact, when I took the boys to their first live show, they were just fascinated because they'd never seen a live performance before, you know. So it was a lovely area in many ways, and a very beautiful area, by the way. Excuse me.
Was that, did you, how long after you bought the house did you buy the restaurant? And were you already breeding, were you already horse breeding around that time as well?
Was I already what?
Were you already
horses?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, I immediately. In fact, I bought a saddle horse immediately upon buying the place, and I've been in love with horses since I can remember. I think it was my first word, probably. So this was kind of a dream come true for me, and. So I did have a saddle horse right away. He was a gelding, however, but I did start purchasing horses to breed, and they were from Ireland. They were Irish jumpers, actually. Beautiful horses. I didn't have a huge herd, but I had, I think, about 8 to 10 at one point. And then I had purchased for Thomas his own riding horse. He was a very good rider, by the way. Excellent rider. My son Matthew never had the interest, but Thomas did. And we did ride together quite often. And I bought, I think you asked me how soon after did I buy the little restaurant?
Yeah.
That was a couple of months or so afterwards. I can't quite remember exactly, but
okay.
It was shortly after.
So it all just came together just so quickly. You bought the house, you had your own diner, you had your horse. So, I mean, like you said, it was a dream come true.
Yes, it was, actually. It was. And, of course, the racetrack was right there, too, so, which was something that we always went to. Everybody went to that. It was just a tradition in Great Barrington and Sheffield to go to that.
Yeah, what was it? What were the races like?
Well, at the time, I had rose-colored glasses on, and I thought they were wonderful, but apparently there was a lot of little not-so-nice businesses going on with the gambling end of it. But at the time, I was unaware of that. Fixing races, yeah. And they would, fixing races and that type of thing. But all in all, it was pretty much a country fair with a lot of racing. And later on, I felt very sorry for the horses. I really did.
Yeah, what was? Tell me more about the house itself. Kind of like the layout and the style, and kind of like, because I'll be, when I talk to Tom and you as well about all the weird stuff that happened around the house, I want to get just a picture of what the house was like.
I added a screen porch to it shortly, probably a year after we were there. I think it was probably a year, which went the whole length side of the house. But as you went into the driveway and up to there was a front porch, an open front porch. There was a bay window in the front. It was, I'm trying to think, probably built in about 1945 or 50, I would guess, something like that. And there was also a carriage house off the back end of the house, which was very common in those days, with the buggies and that type of thing.
there was a center, as you went in the front door, there was a hallway and then a staircase coming from downstairs, which was a wraparound staircase with a very nice entrance. And then you went to the left and you went into a very large living room with a bay window. And the next room on the left was the dining room. There was a large kitchen, room enough to have a table as well in there. And then there was the den, a beautifully done den. I believe the former owners had actually redone the den. It was all done in pine paneling. A huge fireplace that had a great draft. It was a full cellar. And there was a bathroom off the den. And then there was a laundry room from on the right off the den was the laundry room. And I had all kinds of. It was beautifully decorated. Actually, I had lithographs and that type of thing hanging on the wall.
And that was. I'm sorry. You said it was 2 stories.
Oh yes, and upstairs. I forgot upstairs. Yes, there was. There was 3 bedrooms upstairs.
Okay.
The boys shared one. I had one, and my mother had the other bedroom.
Okay.
Well, the first thing that ever happened was the meteorite that crashed. Went right in front of our porch, actually.
Really?
I didn't know what it was, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd never seen one. And it was still on fire. And it was quite an experience. I'd never seen anything like it in my life before. That was the very first indication of anything. This was in the afternoon. In
the day, and you just heard it, or you felt it?
I saw it.
You saw it. Oh, right. Okay.
Absolutely.
You were in the house?
No, we were on the porch, the children and I.
Oh, wow.
There it was. As I said, I'd never seen anything like it before, and I haven't seen anything like it since. To tell you the truth.
How big was it about?
Let me think. I'd say it's about the size of a small basketball. A little smaller than a basketball.
And it was, it couldn't have been no more than a couple hundred feet away, or?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Not even a couple hundred feet away.
Okay.
But the porch was quite close to the road.
Okay. And it was just, and it was you 3 out on the porch?
That's correct.
Okay.
My family and I were taking my brother to Maine for getting him. He was going to go to the University of Maine, and because we went as a family to Maine because my mother was a widow and he could get in as a resident at a lower tuition fee. So we decided we were going to go up there and as a residence and establish a residency there. And on the way up, we stopped at Moosehead Lake in Maine. During just because we were tired of driving, actually. And while we were there, a friend of mine went with me too. Her name was Kim, and my brother and my mother and myself. And it's way up in Maine, by the way, in case you're not familiar with it. And we rented a cabin for the night. And my girlfriend and I were going to camp out by the pond, but it was got pretty cold, and we decided to come back into the house. And actually, my experience was that I was awakened in the middle of the night, and I knew something was in the room with me. I just knew it. Excuse me, let me just get a sip of water. And I tried desperately to turn around or move or say something, and I could hear movements around my bed, but I couldn't move anything but my hands, actually. I tried opening my mouth to call out, and my mouth would open, but nothing would come out. And I was almost like paralyzed, for want of a better word, for a couple of hours until daylight. I could not move. I was absolutely out of it, except that I knew I was awake at the same time. It was kind of a weird thing. And
eventually, I could hear them moving around and about me. I couldn't see very much. It was kind of a shadowy thing. But it was a horrible feeling because I knew somebody was kind of like looking at me and examining me, if you will, which is what I feel anyway about a lot of these things. I think they're looking to find out what we are like here. I don't think they mean harm per se, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was being scrutinized, okay? And it went on for hours, and it was terrifying because I'd never been in a position where I was out of control of myself. And I've never forgotten it. Finally, when I finally was able to yell for my mother, it was well into daylight. I must have fallen back to sleep again because then my room was fully lit. And everything was gone from my room. But I know for a fact that something had been there. And that was in 1954, and I had never forgotten that. It was a terrifying experience for me, for the first time anything like that had ever happened to me.
And did you tell your family about it?
I did eventually, yes. I told my mother eventually.
How did your mother react?
Well, it was sort of, we need to keep this sort of under wraps. She was reluctant to put a finger on what exactly she thought it was. But she knew by 1966.
Okay, so it took that long before you told her. Okay. And was it because other stuff was starting to happen, or you just decided to tell her? Yeah.
I'm sure.
And to go back, just to you remember in the do you ever remember leaving the room, or were you always in the room?
I was always in the room.
You're always in the room, and you said it was dark. You couldn't really see anything.
I couldn't see much except shadows, and I could hear people moving around, or whatever it was moving around. I could hear that distinctly.
So just like several presences, shadows, just walking around.
Yes.
How the boys were gone for a time, and then they showed up on a certain part of the farm.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I still haven't spoken to Tom really about the details of all of these things and what he remembers and what you remember. So,
send him the audio to it.
I can't.
Hey, Brent, we'll send you all the audios to that, okay?
Okay.
From our interviews and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Is that easier for you?
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, if you've already spelled all that out, and you guys have tapes to, that's fine.
Restaurants, other people, attitudes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And then I mean, just in terms of like the the 69 sighting experience happens. And what was your experience after that? Running a business and doing what you were doing.
Tell them about the bagel thing, real quick, and a horse looking in the window. Tell them about it.
Well, okay.
Hey, she's warming up now, Brent. She's a little uncomfortable, buddy. That's all. Right?
Yeah.
Actually, one of the funniest things I guess that could happen was if you can. One of our best friends on Bourbon Street was from Dobbs Ferry, New York, and he's an importer-exporter. They're from Europe.
Watches.
And they weren't used to quite the rural atmosphere that we had become used to. And one of my mares had gotten out of her stock paddock. And apparently he woke up in the morning and my mare stuck her head through his bedroom window. And he opened his eyes and here's this big gray staring at him. But
fortunately they were good friends, and he had a phone close by his bed, so he called immediately. But as far as the restaurant goes, I had decided that because there was so many people from Manhattan, and as you probably well know, they're famous for their bagels. And I had decided to get bagels in on for the weekends, especially when they had come up, and they were always looking for something like that. And I had a sign in the window, and one of these gentlemen, local people, came in and asked me where the puppies were. And I said I had no idea what he was talking about. Apparently, he had misunderstood and thought I had said bagels,
sign,
not beagles.
Oh.
That's what you dealt with.
And it was sort of typical. There was a diverse group, okay, put it that way. But
So it was like locals, and then the more wealthy, the out-of-towners.
Yeah, and there was a little animosity between the two groups. Not so much the New Yorkers, actually, mostly towards the local residents, would seem to be a little resentful of them. Yeah, it was an attitude division there. But yeah, there was a lot of discussion about 1969 in the restaurant with the local people.
Right.
Yeah, well, since after the first incident, there was a lot of doubt and discussion about it. But in 1969, when it was so visible to so many people and had been broadcast, and a lot of people that came into the restaurant had witnessed things themselves in this particular incident, and it was in the paper and on the radio. There was a lot of discussion about it in the restaurant, and we had it was such a small town that there was like one constable who pretty much was the police force, quote unquote. And he came in with his son a lot, and there was a lot of discussions about that. They softened up a lot compared to where they had been after the 1969 incident. However, they still wanted to. A lot of people still didn't like to have it publicized, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, because
from the shop, right?
And it got to the point where I was tired of batting my head against the wall, and I didn't want the children who were getting teased at school to some extent have to go through that. So I decided that it would probably be in my best interest of my family to sell and start over again. So I put the coffee shop up for sale, which is called the Village Green Coffee Shop, by the way.
And this was how long after the occurrence?
About a year.
About a year, okay.
That's 70, right? About 70. Yeah. All right. Then
So I sold the house.
You met Howard. You forgot Howard, your husband.
I never forget my husband.
Right.
But my Howard Reed, my husband.
That's the other thing. We weren't Reed back then.
No, of course they weren't Reed back then.
And there is a Reed Street in the town.
Yeah, the chair.
Yeah. But it has nothing to do with us.
Right.
that we know of, because it was right at the end of our road.
Yeah.
However, yes, I had, at this point, my husband and I had become friends, and he had become friends with my children.
Who is he, and how did you guys
catch up?
It was Howard Reed, and he was from Patchogue, Long Island, New York. And he always had a love affair with New England, so he was looking for employment as a teacher at the time. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and he just was having a joyride and saw this delightful dirt road and drove down the road, and that's how we actually met each other, because my horses were at the fence, and he also was interested in horses. So we actually moved only a couple of miles away from the farm, but it was in Great Barrington, right over the line.
And it was just a different, like Tom was going to a different school, kind of different social circles.
Yes, we bought a Victorian house, and it was in town, so it was very much of a suburban atmosphere. Quite a difference from the farm.
And you and Howard you guys were together at the house?
No, we got married in 1972.
Okay.
And unlike today, we did not live together prior. And it was nice because Thomas and Matthew could both walk to school actually from that house.
I took my go-kart a couple of times. There's a scene for you. Remember, he used to start that near the window and he used to go freak out, right? Because it was how loud that thing was. I had a 2-stroke go-kart, and I actually used to take it to school once in a while.
Did anything strange happen when you were in that home?
No. Nothing at all.
Happened. And then you lived in that house until the boys moved out?
Oh, we lived in pretty much, actually. I'm trying to think how many years we were there because my husband at the time, then, of course, he had already adopted the boys.
Legally, yeah.
Legally, I mean. And he was teaching in Falls Village, Connecticut, which was like 10 miles away. And where he also later became principal, too.
And mayor, selectman.
And selectman after that, when we eventually moved closer to his work. But we lived in, yes, we sold that house in 78 or 79. And moved to Connecticut.
That's kind of about the time that I met Bletchman, and I had actually after doing that Club Med scene, I ended up selling my accounts. I ended up moving and buying a condo in Manchester, which was right near Bletchman's office. And that's kind of how we met. Then of course he organized that symposium, and things resurfaced later on. But the barbecues and Dodd and stuff.
Oh. Yeah.
O'Neill, like I had coffee at the governor's mansion, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, my husband, after law school, was very interested in local politics. He loved local politics.
And so did you, actually.
And
he was younger than you, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And he got very friendly with people who were very... Well, at the time, Governor O'Neill was governor of Connecticut, and one of his best friends knew him well, so he introduced him to Governor O'Neill. And they became quite friendly, and then Chris Dodd, who I think everybody knows, was very active in our area, and he used to come frequently to Falls Village, and we attended barbecues with him, and he supported my husband on his run for selectman. So it was... one of the things that my husband believed most strongly in is giving back to the community that you're living in. So he enjoyed being part of the local politics and the political scene. They did a good number of things. They opened in fact, Nancy Johnson became governor later, and she and my husband became very good friends. And he started the first daycare in Falls Village. I was chairman of the recreation committee, which was pretty bad, but we got our first swimming pool anyway, community swimming pool going, and it was growing in leaps and bounds, and it was nice to see all the people coming up from New York.
It was a suburb of Canaan.
And it was a suburb of Canaan, Connecticut, actually.
Okay. And was it, when did Howard begin talking about this 69 event again? And what do you remember about that when it all kind of resurfaced? Whatever, a decade or so later.
Yeah, my husband really didn't talk about this because it would have been very difficult to achieve some of the positions that he would achieve with this, because it was not generally accepted by anybody.
Yeah, but he was obviously sympathetic to you because you guys met around that time, and it was obviously addressed. And
this wasn't discussed until Tom brought it up after the death of his father, and then he opened up about it again, and so did Matthew, of course.
Yeah.
Believe me, if you haven't been in this position, you wouldn't understand the hostility and the stigma that goes with talking about it. And with someone who was a lawyer and expert on education law, because that was what his specialty is, and that's the hottest thing going right now, they would have thought he was lost it.
When I was at the funeral, they were coming in buses.
Yeah, and they were, actually.
I mean, school buses of kids, and the mayor was there and spoke at his funeral. I mean, it was, everyone knew my father.
The National Guard, but he has also a citation from the city of Bridgeport, Connecticut, commemorating his achievements, and it's considered not a holiday, but a day of remembrance. It's October 2nd.
Bench.
So, I mean, it's something that he's going to open up about, no matter how true the incidents are, because and you probably yourself are aware of the stigma yourself if you start talking about it even today, in this day of supposed enlightenment and Star Wars and everything. But this was something that happened to a family. This was a family event.
So keep it to the family.
And basically, a lot of us handled it in different ways. My husband certainly wasn't going to risk all his years of education over the incident when he could do so much more for people. He was a wonderful educator, and he loved what he did.
It was a black eye for us, I think.
We just, it was not something we discussed. We put it on the shelf until, unfortunately, my husband died much too soon. And
well,
but at least.
So, I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
He passed in that was 2006.
That's correct.
And what that whole how the case was presented at the UN, and that was in what, 93 or 2?
92.
92. So I mean, how did that come about? If like nobody's really talking about it or whatever, how did it come to that? Oh, we have to present this case, at the UN.
That was for me.
Let me have Tom address that, okay?
Yeah, that was just kind of something that was really bizarre, actually, because it was just another Democrat who was an attorney who ran in the same circles and just happened to have a law firm right next. I lived on 26 Prospect Street, and Attorney Bletchman, who organized a symposium, was on Broad Street, and it was like a mile and a half from my house. I could actually walk there if I really wanted to.
And that was in what town?
Manchester, Connecticut.
In Manchester, okay.
Yeah, I still got, I can still pull up, like I've got my closing documents and everything. I can always show where I lived and everything. It was right next to his law firm. He actually moved. He was on Main Street and moved to Broad, but on Fridays I would swing by. I used to take my motorcycle to work, so I used to swing by on Fridays and stop by his office, and he just asked me if what happened, and he had pulled up some things because he used to work with Heineken, all that stuff, and it was he said I had something big coming up, and asked me if it would be okay to mention this if he felt necessary, because he was investigating the Hudson River Valley stuff. And we're like, yeah, sure. And that's how that happened. So that's really it. But it's just the date. It's the date that's so peculiar. I'm going to help you out here, Brian. Now, tell me what you had for a car. Picture this, right? We're pulling up to our store, right? We're basically all New Yorkers, right? And cultured. And my mother's buys this place that used to be a kind of a ratty place, right? I mean, it was a
workman's place. I cleaned it up.
So my mother had a what? What'd you have?
It was 63 or 64 Mustang Gold.
Yeah, gold Mustang. She pulls in with this little fastback thing Mustang. I think it was a little more than that. And starts putting tablecloths, right? Green tablecloths over the tables, and starts making it really, really fashionable. And all these people are coming in, and they're dressed in cow manure and overalls and prison tattoos.
Not everybody.
Not everybody, no. But then you got the New Yorkers coming in, And so you had a really
It was a real mixed bag.
mixed bag, and you were 20.
I was 26 or 7. 28 maybe.
All right, 20. Yeah, whatever. Late 20s.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she told you this, but she used to be a Powers model.
No, I what would I mention?
That's right.
Tell them.
Well, yeah, you mentioned
so much detail. She was a Powers model who ends up buying this little place, so she was already like turning heads. You know?
Yeah, I mean, because you don't just move into town, buy a house and a horse and a bitchin' car, and then something really unsettling happens that the whole town is aware of. It's not like, oh, just some rumor or gossip stuff. It was like, oh no, like she saw something, he did, they did. But yeah, like, I mean, in terms of your own experience, you driving that car, and you guys, you went over the bridge and you saw what you saw, and
I remember he had a close call with his saddle slipped on the horse he was riding. But after the show, we went to a place called the Meadows, which is right on Route 7 in Sheffield. Was just a little barbecue stand.
I think it's the only other restaurant.
It was the only other place you could buy any food.
It's kind of like
in Sheffield.
Our place and we buttered up, yeah.
And after we had our supper there, we were going to make a deposit from the restaurant.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know why we did that. You had to cook or something.
But it was a big weekend. A lot of people traveled Route 7, and it was a good business weekend. Mm-hmm. So we went there to make a drop off at the bank, and then we started driving home. Mm-hmm. My mother was with us. Matthew and Thomas were in the back seat. I was driving, of course, and there was a huge light that just lit up the entire sky. And my mother mentioned it because Thomas, I guess, was giving Matthew a hot ball, one of those hot things, hard candies, which we don't like to let him have. And all of a sudden, everything was lit up. And the last thing I remember was the sound of crickets chirping, and then the lights went out for me, personally. That's the last thing I remember. And when I came to, I just know that I was sitting in the passenger seat, and I had been driving. Mm-hmm. I have no explanation how that happened.
And you were on the same part of the road?
No.
It was further on down the road?
We were back in front of the restaurant.
Silks, yeah. It's called Silks.
Yeah, Silks drugstore, which is right across the way.
Well, not all Silks.
Because my mother, had been the only one outside, and Thomas. And so she apparently had driven, and I came too after we got there. And I have very little memory other than that, but I will never know to this day how I ended up in the passenger seat. I don't know.
And your mom doesn't remember driving?
Yeah. Well, she does remember, but my mother's passed, so
yeah, gone.
She died a number of years ago, but yes, she does remember driving.
When you came to, you guys were, you said in front of a drugstore?
Well, there's a drugstore that was right next to the Village Green restaurant, and it was faster. My mother was going to go for some help, and it was much closer to go back to the store and the restaurant than to our house, which was a number of miles away. We were still at the farm at the time.
And then drove home.
I drove home.
You drove home.
I drove home to go home, yeah.
And you drove the same way home, and you didn't see anything else on your way home?
No, I did not, but I don't think I probably should not have been driving because my head was not well.
Yeah, you were just almost in a state of shock. You all
Exactly.
were. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would say, to be honest with you, at least from my perspective, I felt like, I don't know why we all came to different times and why we all felt like, at least me, I felt like I was almost groggy. You felt that way?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I felt out of it.
Like
Groggy or drugged or whatever.
Yeah, right? Would you say that?
Yes.
You would, honestly.
Yes,
Not only shocked, but also feeling, I'm sluggish and heavy and groggy.
Is I remember being by myself in this big open area and being in a different room that was all white and glassed in. It looked kind of bowed inward, and I had run into a hallway, a big open hallway, looked like a circle with a Y in it. And when I was in this hallway with like 3 separate, do you remember? I told you about that.
I was yelling for you.
I heard my mom's voices, just hovering.
It was huge. It lit up this whole sky.
Yeah, and did you?
could see inside. Here's the other thing. For a while, you couldn't see inside the car, and then you could. So it was almost like it was self-contained, right? And then it lit up. It lit everything up, right? It lit up the inside of the car, the whole thing.
And you saw the source of the light.
No, I didn't see the source of the light.
Yeah, my mom said she didn't see the source of light, and I wouldn't say we saw the source of light either, because I think that it was it glaring? Would you word it that way?
Yeah.
Glaring? You gotta speak up, because nobody can hear you. I can't hear you.
Well, I'm just saying, it illuminated everything. So where it exactly came from originally, I can't say. But it illuminated everything.
Interesting. Okay.
I can't pinpoint exactly where it came from.
Because it looked like, in a way, I think at first, because my grandmother was turned backwards, right? Because
It was behind us, yes.
Yeah, it was behind us. So when she saw it, it was like it was smaller, almost not smaller, but less illuminated, right?
It was just on the horizon, sort of coming
up behind near the bridge.
Right.
And it went the same way we did, right?
Yes.
Kind of moved the same way along the tree line on what side of the road? Left side of the road. Well, you could see something on the right side, too. There was something reflecting or something off to the right, too. But the white light was off to the left. And I would say treetop level?
Yeah.
About treetop level? And it must have lowered because the whole inside of the car
illuminated,
lit up. It was almost like you had a dim bulb, like a 5-watt bulb maybe?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they went to a 50 or 80, 100-watt bulb?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would that be fair?
That'd be fair.
So it kind of went from a low-lit thing to boom. At one point, it almost, to me, I've mentioned this before, it almost looked like there were lights coming directly down, outward.
I remember mostly outward.
Outward. So it was just like, it went from being like a self-contained light, maybe. Picture
the bottom of a stage being lit up.
Bottom of a stage being
like
lit
with
up.
all the footlights.
Okay.
At the bottom of a stage.
There you go.
Okay.
Did you get that? That's my mom. My mom was older then.
Yeah.
It just went to like, you could see the seats, you could see everyone's hair, you could see the dashboard, you could, right?
Yes.
And everything was like, almost like it was like daylight. What'd you say it was? That's kind of extreme, but not like daylight.
No, very much like daylight.
Yeah. And then you mentioned hearing crickets, and that was
afterwards. Yeah, it got really silent, and the car, I don't know if you stopped it or what.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
But the car was stopped, and everything went dead silent.
Yes.
So once the light, and you don't remember if the car turned off or any of that, or if it was running still, or just you just passed out.
Yeah, I doubt seriously that I turned it off.
So that's a good point.
So so I don't believe I turned it off.
And then what? And did you ever talk with your mom about it before she passed?
Yeah, we did occasionally. I'm trying to think about our conversations.
I don't know. She didn't talk much about it. Yeah, like a floating
strip mall.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Something like that. Yes.
She mentioned that. That's interesting. Yeah. And does she remember losing consciousness?
Yes, she does.
She does. Did she? But she remembered getting in the driver's seat and turning around and driving.
Oh, yes.
So did she see the light like vanish or go away or whatever?
No.
I think it was hours later, about 3 hours later.
Yeah, it was a couple of hours
When it
later.
happened,
Okay.
well, here's the thing. It would happen what? Right? It was just...
Oh, I'd say around 6-ish, 7-ish, something like that. It's dusk.
Okay.
Got back to Silks. Well, Silks was still open, but they were open late, so we could have been there, we don't really know, 10, 11 o'clock?
I would say around maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock.
10.
So you guys, you lost a couple hours. Okay.
Yes.
And
Matthew was last.
Yes, Matthew was last.
he woke up, and I know I need to talk with him whenever I can. But I mean, yeah, what does he, and especially to you, Tom, what does he remember with regard of what you remembered? Did he have a similar experience?
Here's the thing. Here's the weird thing about the thing with Matthew, and this is kind of interesting, and it's just something that actually my son picked up on. Was that first of all, Matthew had a club foot. Remember, he had the braces. He can speak up.
Yes. He's talking to you now.
I know, but the club foot thing, that was...
Yes, we had the surgery performed on it to correct it.
And I don't know what the prop surgery was for his tendon.
Yes, it was correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, he remembers a lot of attention being put on his leg. He remembers a lot of attention being put on him. He remembers a lot, and he talks a lot about having this, he had a tugboat, the yellow one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was a bass toy.
He used to keep with him, and he remembers having it with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he, so what I remember is kind of different than Matthew. I remember looking for him. I remember being concerned about him. And looking over my shoulder all the time, wondering where he was, and so I had kind of a big brother thing for him, whereas he remembers things being more particular to him personally. Does that make sense? And
so this was after you. He had a surgery already done on his foot.
yeah, well, he remembers a lot of attention being put on it in '67. And that's where my mom was looking for us outside and everything. And there's a lot of little things that she's not mentioning that I wish she would. But we used to have, a phone and a light on a telephone pole out there near the stable?
Yeah.
Which one?
It was a light.
A light? Was it a phone or was it a light?
No, it was a light.
A light. So we had a floodlight out near the stable. It was kind of a weird thing. The picture, a lot of these people were... aside from Boardman Street, they didn't have a whole lot, and we even had lights outside. So when she was looking for us back in '67, even the lights were on, the floodlights were on, or at least one or two, and that was a time that Matt remembers a lot of attention to his foot. And my mom was looking for us, and we had a hay baler, right? It was a hay baler on the property that we weren't allowed to go past.
Oh, yeah.
They have a hay baler thing in case we fell off the horses. So when we were nowhere to be found, so it's a little bit different. I remember kind of the looking for him and the areas and stuff, and he kind of remembers a lot more detail when it comes to what happened to him.
I had surgery done for him when he was about 4.
Okay.
What year would that be?
And it would be 66 or 7. And it was done in Adams, Massachusetts.
Did he come to you first about these?
We were in the kitchen there at that time.
Yes, he did.
So would it be like he would wake up in the morning and remember something, or?
Remember that night?
Yes, he remembered the events of that night.
My mom brought us into the house. We were seen outside in the driveway. I guess I was 15 feet away.
Yes.
Brought us into the house. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and my grandmother was there, and we gave Matt baby aspirin and orange juice or whatever. We slept downstairs in front of the fireplace and all that. I mean, it was very upfront with us, I think. The thing about that, too, though, I wouldn't say that we felt droggy or we were placid, maybe.
Placid is a good word.
Placid. Non-responsive.
We weren't too alert.
Not too alert. Okay. Thanks, Mom. Yeah, I'd say that we were... here's the interesting thing. I remember looking at my brother. My brother remembers looking at me in the driveway. We both remember our mother running out to us and picking us up. And we remember being in the kitchen. Yet, you say we were placid and not responsive.
Really? Yeah.
But we remember it pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, you were probably on the same wavelength with him.
You were just...
And not on my wavelength.
Right.
Was it just catatonic?
Yes, that's a good word, too.
It's not Matthew's wavelength.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when someone's in a coma and they can hear people talking to them, but they can't respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was like, kind of. Because I remember it vividly, but...
Mm-hmm.
Would you say you were driving in 54?
No. I was just, for the time that
Right.
I was being assaulted or whatever was happening to me, I couldn't move. But when I got up in the morning, I was not groggy at all.
But in 69 we were.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Now you can tell them about how we were talking about it in the restaurant. People would come in.
Oh, we talked about it.
And that's kind of what happened. That's a good question because, right, the restaurant at that point hated us, right?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of conversation about that, especially not just at home, but in the Village Green restaurant also.
Let me interrupt. I guess it really depends on what we talked about.
The tensions are, some people want to be non-committal about their involvement with it, probably because they were afraid of innuendo and that type of thing. But some people could get nasty about it, but not most. Just maybe a table of four.
Dreaded table of four.
Not everybody, no. Not everybody was nasty. But there were some that could get nasty and defensive and take it almost like personal affront. But the nice thing about the restaurant was, whether good, bad, or indifferent, that was a place people came to talk about stuff. But after the first incident, there was some change in their behavior. There was a little more scrappiness and agitation, and they weren't quite the same personality. On edge, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and things only a mother would really notice.
Yeah, prior to that, there hadn't been any at all.
How about the horse? Talk about that. I just walked out and put my hands up and the horse stopped. That's kind of cool. That happened. That really happened.
I don't know if he wants to know about it.
We got to talk a little bit. He's got interviewing you.
There was when Matthew first came home after having his leg operated on. He was on one of the smaller horses, that pony I bought for the kids, and somehow I was walking him around the paddock on the back of the horse and whatnot, and somehow the pony got away from me. And I remember Tom ran up
and going full speed
and put his arms out and stopped the pony entirely. It was quite amazing. And the boys had their IQ tested. That was after the incident, by the way. Came out with a genius IQ.
Both of them?
No, Thomas.
And what was the restaurant? Oh, by the way, what the restaurant was known for? What was it known for?
The shakes?
Yeah, shakes.
Shakes and big breakfast.
Big breakfast, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember a willow tree off to the left side of a waterway, and I remember, looking for Matthew at that point, and Matthew remembers that vividly as well. That's one, it's like he says, it's kind of like, sporadic or fragmented, but we always used to talk about how what did that mean? What was significance? And then my mother goes out and buys and plants this friggin' willow tree right?
Yeah, next to the water hole.
Next to the water hole, on the same side of the water hole from the front of the house. So it almost mirrored what we saw.
Yeah. And
then we changed bedrooms, and then every night before bed I would see it, and then my mother came in one night, leaned over me, and I was sleeping with a fork. And was frightened by the tree, I guess. I don't know. It was weird.
And that was...
Remember that?
Yes, I painfully remember that.
Sorry.
And you saw that vision, was that in the 66, 67 times, or was that...
That was 66. I don't know why my mom would have done that so perfectly mirrored if she wasn't there.
Well, your mother was governess, yeah.
Yes.
And you lived with her. You guys, you lived with her.
Yes,
Yeah.
we had a
lived in the same-
apartment in their house.
Did you and Anna have the same apartment?
Yes, that's what I'm just telling you.
And that was in which city? Denver. Okay.
In Denver, in this area called Cherry Hills. Well, you were with us, and you during the day you spent the time with the rest of the children. Well,
Yeah.
he was FDR's grandson, and Carol had been an airline stewardess, and she was a lovely lady. And I did get to meet Eleanor Roosevelt briefly when she came to visit her grandson, but during the Bay of Pigs incident, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was quite a lady.
Yeah.
You never crossed Eleanor Roosevelt, Grandmere, as she was called. But they were very unpretentious people. And they were lovely to me and my mother, and to Thomas also. They treated him just like one of their own.
That's
So,
great.
What about the black maid?
And we had a wonderful lady that did actually do all the housework. Her name was Ruby, and she was a lovely big black lady married to a minister in Denver. And I'll never forget, one time I had to go out briefly, and she was there, and I had never left Thomas ever with anybody. I never had to let him out of my sight, actually. And she said she would take care of him. And I can still remember to this day, because Thomas was very small. And she had him bouncing on her breast, rocking in the rocking chair, singing to him as I was going out the door. She was just a lovely, lovely, loving lady. But there were some good days there. Very good days.
In a dress and stuff out here.
Actually, in a beauty contest for the Colorado Coronation Lady, and I was lacking a proper dress to wear to the interview, and Carol Roosevelt insisted on sending me to her dressmaker at her expense, and having a dress made for me, which just came out of left field. I mean, it's something she certainly didn't have to do. But that's what I mean about them being lovely people and very generous. And she didn't like the way it fit the first time and sent me back to get another one.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, she did. She really did. She was lovely.
I mean,
Yeah, that's cool.
And because they flew back and forth to Aspen all the time, so basically they weren't home very much. The one thing that surprised me most was they weren't really terribly close to their children. They were good to them. I don't mean in any way that they weren't, but they weren't huggy-kissy kind of people, if you know what I mean. And if they were gone for a week or two at a time, my mother and I just had this whole big place to ourselves and the children. And we did have 24-hour police because there's always the possibility of kidnapping with wealthy children. But,
Where were they?
so it was a lot of responsibility, but it was also a nice time.
Where were the police? On property?
No,
Oh, where?
they just patrolled.
Just paroled. Patrolled. Yeah.
So when I was growing up in Westport, have you ever heard of the Westport Playhouse by any chance? Because a lot of people have. A lot of big stars come there. In fact, I met Marilyn Monroe, and I was in school with Mariette Hartley. You may or may not know her. She did quite a bit of television work, especially in Bonanza and Little House on the Prairie. She did a lot of those. And
Tina Louise, you know her.
but it was always
like a rite of passage practically for teenagers in Westport to work at the Westport Playhouse, which I did. I loved it. And got to meet John Forsythe and Shelley Winters and a lot of Jack Klugman.
Jack Klugman, yeah.
Who I loved. He was the funniest guy in the world. He was just wonderful. But it was a lovely experience and a great way to spend a summer. It was all summer stock, you know.
Right.
So that was early. What years was that?
Well, that was when I was about 16, like junior, senior year in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said, how long did you said you lived in Santa Monica?
It was 2107 Cloverfield Boulevard. It's right off Pico. 62 or 3.
Okay. Okay.
Well, first of all, I was a hostess at the Penguin restaurant in Santa Monica.
Oh, cool.
And then I decided they get something that had more benefits, if you will. I had a son to take care of. And so I went to work for General Telephone Company as well.
And then you picked up and made the move back east.
Yes, I did. And I did some little modeling on the side when I came back east, but nothing big. And I frankly didn't care that much about it. I was more interested in... I decided my whole focus was going to be on the boys and raising them and giving them the kind of life that they really deserved, and that's what I did.
But she supported me when I wanted to start Miami Models. That was kind of cool.
Oh, of course I would do that. No, I had no intentions of doing anything but being mom. But also, I took care of my mother, and I was supporting everybody by the time I was 23. And I don't regret it at all. I don't regret the decisions at all. And at 54, I got my master's.
Oh, wow. Your master's in what?
Ministry. Actually, I'm fascinated with studying old scripture.
Okay.
And I'm studying the Aramaic and the Hebrew and the Greek.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I spend my idle time doing. But that was my focus.
Where did you get your master's?
In Trinity in Naples, Florida.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I was about 26 when I had a master's. So.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. So it's not so late. Yeah. You know, you were an upstanding family. Yeah. Well, no, yeah, definitely, because, I mean, it's obvious that you were a woman ahead of your time and really just doing your own thing and taking care of your own. And, I mean, you know, obviously it bothered people. And, you know, Tom experienced the tension he did. You know, I talked to a local writer but you know, he remembers that day at the town hall and what happened, and I mean, it's very, you know, it's very telling, if anything, of just tear ourselves apart over, you know, what we can't understand or really don't want to understand.